Hello, hello, hello.
Hi.
Hi, namaskar, namaste. Hello, you stunning, gorgeous people.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for attending tonight's event. I feel so honored and privileged to be facilitating this conversation with my dear, dear friend, Roshan James. And
I love you.
Roshan is such an absolute delight and a powerhouse poet. If you get a chance, please get a copy of Pink Moon. It's truly fantastic. So thank you so much, Queen Books, for having us. I will pass on the mic over to you.
I'd like to do a brief land acknowledgement. We're on Indigenous land. This is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We would like to acknowledge these Indigenous nations for their guardianship of this land. This land is also part of the Dish with One Spoon territory, a treaty between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Anishinaabe, and allied nations to peaceably share and care for this land, its waters, and all of the biodiversity in the Great Lakes region. All those who come to live and work here are responsible for honoring this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. We'd like to reaffirm our accountability to these Indigenous nations and to all Indigenous peoples and communities living in Toronto. There's a beautiful resource from Talking Treaties Collective called the Treaty Guide for Torontonians that is available here and at the library. There's also this beautiful collection about Indigenous Toronto. Those are some resources that I'd like to share, and there's so much more for us to explore. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Queen Books. Allow me to enlighten you on the delight and gift and blessing that is Roshan James. Like the name itself states, Roshan lights up a room, has lit up the entire literary world, and it's an absolute joy to see a gorgeous, kind, and humble human being grow. Thank you. I'm just so honored. Okay, let me read a little bit about Roshan. As a part of the South Asian diaspora, Roshan researches and experiments to create work that embodies decolonization, identity, timelessness, mindfulness, purpose, and healing. Let that sit for a hot minute. Entrenched in her work is anti-oppression advocacy and representation of marginalized, melanated voices to help dismantle colonial capitalist systems. Pink Moon is part anthem of decolonization, part oracle of the times, earthy, magical, and steeped in ancestral connection. Roshan James fuses her lived experience as a Tibetan Indian born in Scarborough with a tangible connection to nature, humanity, and realms of consciousness. James makes peace with the tension between her self-identities through poetry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please give a round of applause.
Allow me to introduce Aashay, also a gorgeous human. I'm so honored that you did this with me this evening, and just getting to work on this with you over the past couple of months, weeks, talking about it, thinking about it, getting excited about it. It's been just such a blessing in my life, so thank you very much. So let me enlighten you all on Aashay, whose name means meaning, so essence, so important. Aashay Dalvi, they, them, founder, Rad Riot Books. Since moving to Kitchener-Waterloo a few years ago at the height of the pandemic, Aashay Dalvi has helped organize anti-racism rallies, have delegated at regional council towards reallocating the police budget, delegated at the school board council with an emphasis on teaching queer literature in schools, co-founded local grassroots initiative, GroundUpWR, Waterloo region, pardon me, and co-produced 2021's Rainbow Reels Queer and Trans Film Festival. They are currently working on starting an anti-racist, queer, and migrant-centric bookstore called Rad Riot Books. After moving to Canada less than half a decade ago, Aashay noticed a lack of representation in bookstores of Black, Indigenous, and racialized books. Aashay started Rad Riot Books as a way to educate readers on anti-racism, Indigenous and Black solidarity, and create a space for queer and racialized newcomers to feel validated. Canada is a country of immigrants. Most Canadian immigrants are from countries in Asia, Africa, and South America. It is time for immigrants to feel represented in the literature we consume in Canada. Rad Riot Books is an intentionally curated collection of books that encourage readers to diversify and decolonize their bookshelves. Thank you so much, Aashay, for everything you do.
They sound amazing. Quick question. Who here has seen Yellow Jackets? Yes? Are we fans of Yellow Jackets? Yes? Yes?
I'm sure I'd love it.
Oh my god. If you love Yellow Jackets, you're going to love Pink Moon.
Oh.
That's exactly what I say at the back of this book. Roshan is going to read an incredible piece of poetry from their new collection for you. Please welcome them with a round of applause as they take center stage.
So, some of you may have read a recent article in Open Book on their platform about the meaning and the intention behind Pink Moon, and it was telling the story about Air India Flight 182 and the bombing that happened in 1985. So I was 5 years old at the time, and my aunt, Sister Josephine Ann James, one of my dad's younger sisters, had come over from India to visit us here. And on the way back from her trip, the bombing happened, and she was killed in that. So at the time, I didn't really understand much of the context. I was very little. I knew it was tragic. I was extremely sad. I felt very connected to her. I remember spending time with her. And it wasn't until over the last few years that I realized truly like the broader significance, and it actually struck me that we hadn't learned about it in school at all. There was like no mention of it in any of the history classes that I was in. So I started digging into that. At the same time, I was getting very curious about my own ancestry overall, so the Tibetan side, but also the Indian side. And my dad was born and raised in Myanmar, and so just learning about all of that has become kind of a fascination for me and a focal point for my research. So as I was thinking about this last year, I started writing a long poem, and it just kind of flowed out of me one day as I was reflecting on my aunt. And at the time I've been going through coaching and life coaching, book coaching with M. Greiner, and I wrote Spirit of Her, I recorded it and just sent it off to M, and I didn't even listen to it. And that poem was about my aunt, but about so much more. And M responded very positively to it and shared it with Michael Holmes, and then we started working on a manuscript that turned into Pink Moon. So, she rose up from the seabed, seaweed clinging to her swollen head, from her hair hanging, arms straggling, like the kelp forests upside down. The same flowing tendrils, but not the same, as her hair had been tightly coiled into a nape of the neck knot. Under her habit, she swore her confessions to an angry God, the God of her christened mother, and out of spite to the older gods of origins unknown. So long forgotten they were spirit, symbols, and numbers, songs of the rising sun. Mary, may your grace find us in the hour of our deepest need, in the jungle of our own transgressions. Mary, can you hear us over the explosions, between screams and clawing metal? Mary, can you hear us at the bottom of the ocean, beneath bodies of water, hemmed by skirted shores? Weren't we all connected at one point? Weren't we all born from the womb? Doesn't land belong to everyone who lives on it? And the sea belongs to the blue. But where did she come from before that? Has she been here all along? Let the burning paper go. Who needs a label when we know warmth in our bones and the feel of snow? On her tongue are maps of wisdom, her lands, spoken peace bridges built by her hands. What wars has she already paid for? Beyond the realm, self-recognition is a faint star, and she is an earthen vessel, a jar formed by light. She writes from the maw saying, it's okay to go in. Memory is the mother of mythologies. Let's rewrite the canon with new lives and new eyes. What have we tasted of goodness and fear? What bushes burn when she is near? And what songs play on the radio laced with regret? Who is she now that the ghosts are gone? And what's left? What does she call forward when the lights aren't on? They didn't know they were only catching slivers, only some of her, through fringed fragments of dusty glass. Her wholeness wasn't something that could be caught on camera. It would take a lifetime to know her, to learn at the feet of her joy. Thank you.
Let that poem sink in for a little bit, especially given the events of earlier this week. A police officer decided that a 23-year-old brown girl's life had limited value. Think of Janvi Kundala in this moment. Think of all the Black, racialized, and Indigenous trans folk who continue to be told that their life has limited value. This morning, there was a counter-protest because a massive group of queerphobic and transphobic parents ripped the tongues, the autonomy, the agency from their beautiful, intelligent, sentient, queer and trans kids and youth and decided to take up space. I encourage all of you to channel queer liberation through poetry, through literature. Thank you so much for sharing that beautiful, beautiful poem with us today.
Thank you so much, Aashay. Yes, I do want this to be a space where everybody, wherever I am, wherever we are, a space that's safe and inclusive, and nobody should ever have to question whether they are welcome. So that's what we work on. And I might cry. I also wanted to mention my very new friend and also author Hannah Shafi is here. It's so exciting. She's got a book coming out in October. It's incredible. I have a copy. I should write it so you could sign it. Just a quick plug because there's other amazing writers and folks who are working on similar things and hold this love. So thank you for being here, Hannah. Yeah.
Your poetry is the power, the oracle that invites you to acknowledge the magic of womanhood, of femininity, that encourages you to feel safe with the earth that we come from. So, my question to you is, how has nature informed this incredible identity, this beautiful method of healing through poetry?
Wow. We could spend so much time talking about everything to do with this, and maybe one day we will. So nature is my safe place. It's my refuge. I literally go and talk to the trees near us on a daily basis. I sit and I meditate in our garden, and that has just become my ritual. It's what centers me, it's what grounds me. And through nature, that is what really called my attention to art overall and pulled me and basically flowed through me, I feel like, in order to just create visual art and to express art through whatever way I could, so including writing and poetry. I find poetry, especially abstract and lyric poetry, is just such a good way to talk about the things that I feel from nature. And sometimes I will literally channel or just receive messages and they're so clear. Like, it just really feels like somebody is speaking to me. And a couple of years ago, I really started looking at the divine feminine overall and understanding it as an energy, as a frequency, and how it manifests in all of our lives, and yet has been so subverted and oppressed as a concept. And the more I followed learning about it and really trying to just sit with it and connect with it, the more I felt like I discovered more about me too, and parts of me that I hadn't looked at or acknowledged or really celebrated, because from the outside in, you're usually getting cues that, no, don't be like this, don't be like that, this is not a great way to make money, this is, more professional over here, this is how you should look professional. So it was so liberating to really understand what more there is to our beings overall, and to really just sink into that. And honestly, through that work, and I don't mean this to sound like very cliche or anything, but honestly, through this work, it's actually changed my life, because I went from working in a corporate job, 9 to 5, in leadership, and it was very tantalizing to stay because of money, but everything in me just screamed like I couldn't. So yeah, it basically changed the trajectory of my life overall over the last few years.
I'm going to bookend that beautiful answer
Okay.
with words from your book.
Thank you.
We're all connected by marrow and air.
Because we are connected, this is the thing. Like, you learn, as you start to learn about divine feminine, even divine masculine, and the universe overall, we are all, every single one of us, from the devious to the more saintly even, and all points in between, we're all connected. It really helps you learn to be compassionate when you see both light and dark within yourself, and that there's the potential for that in everybody. So I find for me, it really is a humbling process. It really drives the ego down. And then I find that's a better way to even see the connection in others too. Anyway, sorry, I kind of interrupted.
In your poem, Baka, you talk about spices of the displaced tongue. I wanted to ask you, you say that there's the power of cardamom, the spice that your tongue couldn't handle, but you knew it was the spice of the gods. So my question is, what were some of your earliest memories of the spices of the displaced tongue?
So that was so specific to a couple of memories from childhood where, like, if you've ever bitten into cardamom after it's been cooked, like, it doesn't taste good. It tastes like you want to spit it out, basically, but it infuses the food that it is used in, or that people use it in. And so there was something just like puzzling about that to me, but also fascinating. And I remember being on a flight with my parents. I think we were literally traveling between cities in India when I was 8 years old, and we made a trip there. And somebody actually offered me cardamom as like a treat. Like, I think they're like, oh, here, have a cardamom. And I took one bite of it, and I was like, oh my God, this is not candy. Like, I felt duped. But thinking about that, I'm like, what else do I not know, really? Because my parents, as much as they shared some of our culture with us and little bits of language with us, I think they felt the pressure to assimilate and to raise us as Canadians and to just focus on that as part of our upbringing. So I felt very disconnected from my culture for the longest time, and it's been an absolute joy to learn more, reconnect more. And it's interesting because sometimes instinctively I will know certain things, but I don't know how I know them. Like about turmeric and the uses for turmeric, or like Shiva the Destroyer, like that phrase just popped into my mind and I had to go look it up, and I'm like, oh yeah, Shiva is the Destroyer. Okay, cool. Yeah, so there's a bit of naivete in some of the poems because that is reflective of how I'm approaching this work. It's truly like in some ways a blank canvas, a clean slate, and I have so many questions. And yeah, so cardamom, tastes, the essence is lovely, and I think it also is like a signature taste too in Indian cuisine. So that was the other thing. Like it feels like it connects to deeper things or more spiritual aspects of the whole culture for me.
In your poem 4, there's a line. How can we be so bold as to define what makes civility? And you ask that of your readers. Who decides what civility means? Who decides how civil we are being? And when I think of civility, I think of the lawmakers who are deciding that you need to be civil, and the law protectors who decide that you need to be policed. Does our civility depend on us being policeable?
That's a juicy question. Does our civility require us being policeable? No. Say that off the hop. I don't believe so. Civility, I've always been a rebel in pushing against things that are set as like the norm. I think that is just like an instinctive thing since I was little. I was always like a challenge to my parents, so that then translated into questioning pretty much everything. boggles my mind, some of the things that we have set as norms that are so locked in that we feel like we can't break free of that, lest, like, I don't know, sometimes it's stuff that's like an illusion. Most of the time it's an illusion. I think if we are guided by love and kindness and compassion, we probably don't need quite as many laws that we have. I was also thinking about the church and thinking about various denominations and the sets of almost like bylaws basically as part of a church, and the rules that you need to follow to fit in. And so that to me expresses that question around who gets to make these rules, why are they set, why are they canonized, and why are people why do they cling to them, really? So yeah, I started the poetry manuscript with lots of questions. It almost became a collection of questions. Maybe I might do that. Just questions, open-ended, no answers, because it's really hard to get to answer sometimes. But
And that is the power that I believe in queerness. If you are queer, to me, being queer means questioning the status quo, challenging the binary in all of its forms and variations, to question, why am I being told how to function, how to act, how to behave, how to be, how to breathe?
yeah, too many rules.
So thank you for asking questions. That's powerful. I want to read another poem. Patrons and Possessions. What possesses a woman to turn beads on a string? And what happens when the planet runs out of metal for the king? Corporate manifestos uphold hierarchies. It's basically the patriarchy coveting the patron's trophy. What are we saying if we don't say no to what our mothers choked on?
Thank you for reading that.
Of course. It's a beautiful poem. Thank you for writing it. I'm sorry, I'm going to quote poems. It's just what's going to happen. Okay. There's a poem, Heartstrings and Hanging Things. I have so much of myself to reclaim, to pull back in, loosening of heartstrings and leftover hanging things. Pass me the scissors, I'm about to go in. Of course, time and place started falling out from the rafters of yesterfears. Yesterfears.
I like making up words.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. That's Shakespeare feel. When I read it, the first thought that came into my mind was, you were asking me to find the truth within me. You were pushing me to find the light within me. So thank you. So, tell me more about yesterfears.
So many things I would keep hidden. Again, shame, pain, things that we've been through that we don't want other people to know about specifically, that we might feel like people know about us just by looking at us, and that leaves us feeling self-conscious and like just kind of watching how we are. And yeah, fear, I find, is really the root of all of that. Not wanting to be seen and worrying about what others are going to think and what others might do to us. And I really wanted to frame that as being in the past, in the context of this poem, but wanted to just highlight, like, the yesteryears are still like this like looming, like, ghostly presence as well, and emerging as we go and excavate within ourselves and find them. Yeah. And then cut them out. Or embrace them too. So different schools of thought.
I'm going to tweet that. Yeah. Old Twitter.
Old Twitter, X, or whatever. What the heck is it? I don't know.
There's another poem. Oh my God, there's so many. They're all so beautiful.
I love that you have Barbie written in just like
I have Barbie
underlined.
written. Barbie.
I love it.
Wonder. I often wonder if stars know the names faded old men cast up claiming them. Are they okay with being followed from one end of Pangaea to another, bringing early peoples into contact with each other? I often wonder. When I first read that, I thought of how men have this need, mostly patriarchy has this need to name and claim everything it sees, even if it's a rock in space.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time staring at the stars. This is my husband right here. This is my son, Patrick, Theo. We spend most nights staring at the stars in the night sky. We're very, very fortunate to have like this almost 360 view of the night sky right down to the horizon and across. And that really fuels us, just staring in wonder at the sky, spending time with the universe. And nighttime is just so special, like we're nighthawks. So one evening, thinking about it, I'm like, who gave the stars these names? Obviously, like past astrologers, but what gave them the that sense of like legitimacy? And I'm not, the word's like right on the tip of my tongue, but essentially, like, why did they think that they could just like name these stars? And that became what they were called. And I don't know, I was like, from the stars' perspective, like, do they know their names? Do they know these words that we use to talk about them? And it just was an interesting flip around, and that's where the poetry came from.
Beautiful.
Because I was indignant on their behalf.
Pretty cool. I'm going to read another poem out loud. We're beginning to see a pattern.
Yes.
Altar. Desolation drops us to our knees, teaches us the sacred discipline of letting go. But I had questions left to answer. When I first read that, I immediately thought of, I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. But in a feminist demand and a rallying cry for answers kind of way. In a very Yellow Jackets kind of way. So how did this come about?
Oh man. Just knowing that there are so many more things unexplored, yet to be explored. It feels like an infinite, as much as our connection is infinite, our energy is infinite, there's always going to be more to learn and so many more questions. And as I was finishing the manuscript, it felt like, you know, there's so many other things I could kind of try to scrape into it and pull into it, but that felt like something to just like wrap with, because I'd rather leave it a little bit like a live edge. Because I don't have all the answers, and I can't just be like, this is it, this is the canon of this. It's a living thing and a living exploration. So.
There is a longer poem in this book called A Song for Trees.
Yes.
How did the song come to be?
This was my love song to the trees near us. So spending every day with them and feeling them in different seasons. it flowed from that. And I thought about the small creatures that live in our in the ecosystem near our home. There's a lot of insects, like a lot, like the spiders are like jumbo this time of year. They're beautiful though too, and you start to realize again how everything is connected and see things from that level. So thinking about like the highway for the little feet and how animals create these pathways in and amongst nature and trees. So I just wanted to talk about them as like trees being like a village with the creatures and the living things that rely on that for shelter, and the communication network between trees and fungi. I'm so fascinated by that. Also, I'm thinking about trees as people, as so. Yeah, not as people, but as having a conscience. Yes, exactly, as sentient beings, and having thoughts and feelings and things that they transmit and share with other trees, and potentially with us too if we're paying attention. And even just looking at how they move and where they choose to grow, because that also, I drive in and out of town, so between the country and the city in Kitchener-Waterloo, and sometimes you see these riversides and riverbanks where you're like, why is that tree like literally stretched out over the river or body of water? It doesn't look like the most thriving place for it to be, and yet like there's a reason for it doing this and being there. So I think there's part of A Song for Trees that speaks to that.
Thank you. My last question. So what do you think her name is?
So I feel like we all have spirit names. I don't know why I feel that or why I know that. But I think there's, outside of what our given names are, there's something that's like encoded deep inside us at like a soul level. And so that was my question. I don't know. And I feel like I've had some downloads about what my mind might be. It's numeric, it's geometric, it's very interesting. I need to study that a little bit more. I have it tattooed on my arm. And but I feel like that's something that I think each person, if they follow sort of self-exploration and self-reflection, you get to like learn more about what that could be. If that makes sense.
Yes, it does. I felt held by Pink Moon, so I thank you for that. I felt seen by Pink Moon, and I thank you for that. I felt pushed to think, to question, to challenge, to live, to experience through Pink Moon, and I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for writing this incredible collection.
I appreciate that so much, Aashay.
Now let's open the questions to the audience.
Yeah, anything is free to ask. Theodore.
Did you get the thing about the trees from the Silver Arrow?
Oh, so we read this book, The Silver Arrow. It was part of our bedtime reading last year, and it is an amazing novel. It last name Grossman. I can't remember the first name of the author, but it's definitely worth a read. It's just magical overall. And one of the characters, Kate, ends up turning into a tree for a span of time. And we loved that part because it's so descriptive about what Kate feels like as a tree. And I remember it was literally around the time, just maybe after after I wrote the manuscript for Pink Moon, I was like, this is such an interesting like synchronicity, like seeing this character do this in this novel. It kind of happened roughly around the same time-ish, Theo. Yeah. Hannah.
If like I feel like there's people who might be intimidated by like reading poetry that's very spiritual, just because like not everyone necessarily feels that they're spiritual or understands like quote unquote alternative spiritualities. So basically whatever is not already part of like an institutionalized religion.
Yes.
So like how would you sort of not sell them on your book, but how would you sort of encourage them, like what would be your advice to them of sort of how to read Pink Moon or how to sort of take it in?
That's a great question. My hope is that people would be able to see their connection to the whole through it. And so it doesn't kind of run against any other tradition or religion necessarily. It definitely questions Catholicism, I will say outright.
That's fair.
Amen.
Everyone's favorite form of colonization.
But I feel like there is so much that I've learned from different faiths and what I've observed my friends doing through rituals and practicing with their families, that there's aspects of it that will resonate because it's also entrenched in different practices too. And I think most folks, I guess I shouldn't say that so broadly, but poems like A Song for Trees feel more universal, like something that people can read and connect with outside of a sense of like a specific spirituality. And I would never want anybody to see this collection as like, you should follow this and think this way. This is merely an example of my lived experience and my questioning, all the questions I have. So it's more of like, go out and question things, go and challenge things if you feel led to do that, and embrace what feels meaningful and connected for you, and that allows you to have that connection with whatever that like, if you believe in God, if you don't believe in God, whatever you feel and whatever helps you feel more connected to yourself, because truly the universe is actually here, not out there, I believe. So whatever makes you feel more connected to yourself, do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaking of the Song for Trees, while reading this book, it reminded me of Orlando
Yes.
by Virginia Woolf.
One of my faves.
In Orlando, the book invites you to find your own inner queerness in the company of nature. And that is how I felt while reading this play.
Yeah.
To allow myself to be one with nature and then trying hard to be one with myself.
That's a great way of summarizing that. I
Thank
love
you.
that. And I love Orlando. Like, when Orlando turns into a tree, it was literally the most magic moment. And I read this when I was in high school.
It's a powerful book. It's one of the earliest books I know of that blatantly and explicitly features gender fluidity, unapologetically.
So creatively. Yeah. Love it. Thank you.
Any more questions?
I have a question. So I think you talked a lot about sort of the most frequent threads and inspirations, places you really draw from, like nature and like the divine and that sort of thing. And I think as writers, like, you tend to often return to those same sorts of ideas. But what I'm curious, like in writing Pink Moon, was there any source of inspiration that surprised you, or like unexpected thing that resulted in a poem?
That was a very, very cool question. Was there? I think in a way the whole collection did surprise me, because I wasn't planning on writing a collection. It sort of emerged after Spirit of Her. I definitely wasn't planning on writing Spirit of Her either, just a moment on an evening. Research-wise, I think, there's something that wasn't included in Pink Moon. I don't know if this counts, if I'm answering your question well, but I do research a lot about just science and the body and biology in general, and learning about the heart, and that the heart has cells that allow it to taste was a really like brain bendy thing for me. I remember that it was like a couple of years ago I discovered that, and sitting with that, I think what it did for me was allowed me to look at things and see the other possibilities related to those things that might be completely surprising. And there's a term for that where it's like if you're able to like see a sound, or I don't know if somebody knows that. Thank you. Yeah, I was like there. I feel like I'm more open to that as an experience and a phenomenon, and then because of that, sometimes my poetry and my metaphors will become very bendy, and I will end up creating words or mashing things together that might be a little more surprising. But I don't know if there was a specific poem in here that did that, other than some of the metaphors within the poems that did that. So I don't know if I answered your question well. I really liked your question.
I'm curious. Hi, I'm Lisa.
Lisa,
Lovely
so nice to meet you.
Can't wait to read the book. I'm really curious about when this work became the most important work, and your decision to leave this corporate life became abundantly clear.
Yes. So last year, May 2022, I was in a new role at an insurance company. It was supposed to be almost my dream role. Something wasn't going well with it, and at the same time, projects related to art and this manuscript were starting to pick up steam, and I found I was trading too much of my time. And the call within myself, like I just had a knowing, I'm like, I have to quit. And I sat with it for 3 weeks. I was miserable for 3 weeks, essentially, because I felt like I was just sitting in this limbo and I wasn't making the decision because I didn't feel like I could. And then one day Patrick was like, you need to just quit tomorrow, and it's just gotta be that, because I can't see you going through this anymore. Like, it's too much. Thank you. So literally the next day I was like, I messaged a couple of my mentors, and I for some reason I felt like I needed their like sign off on it, because I'd had a lot of support along the way. And talked to Em about it, Em Greiner again, and then put in my resignation and started like that free fall. It wasn't like a complete free fall. I knew that there were things coming up, so there was a lot of hope, a lot of stuff to pull me forward from that point. But there is that holy shit moment after you do something like that. Like, it's exhilarating, but it's also terrifying, like in equal parts, and you kind of go back and forth on different days. And it has been the most rewarding year. When you put your intention toward it and start lining up your actions with that intention, what I have found is like the universe met us right there. And there have been moments where we've had to learn through things, and where we've realized that there's just more work in terms.
Roshan, along with having and owning their multi-hyphenated identity, they're also multi-hyphenated with their talents. They have an album coming out, yo. We have a musician in our midst. Oh my god. A vocalist, an artist, a poet, a writer. Oh my god. Got it.
You're so kind. Thank you. Vocal work actually was such an important avenue, because you definitely learn so much about your own voice and empowerment through vocal work. And I think that hand in hand with reprioritizing our lives, just supported, like both streams of work supported each other, essentially.
A boss ass bitch, basically.
Likewise.
Thank you all so much for attending tonight's reading. And thank you. Thank you for writing this incredible collection.
Thank you, Aashay, for just spending this time and facilitating and reading from the book and the questions. And I'm so grateful for all of you for being here. This is a moment, definitely, and I will never forget it. I hope we stay connected, too. I'm on Instagram.
Yes.
Aashay's also on Instagram, so at Rad Riot
At Rad Riot Books.
Books. Sorry, yes. Facebook, too. We
And
keep the
Roshan
lights
is
on Facebook.
At Roshan James.
Yes. So if we're not already connected, please do connect with me. If you have questions after the fact, I'm always happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you.